Hey guys, thanks again for coming in to the hard truth about bodybuilding and steroids. I think we've got a really good episode for you today. So I'm going to ask you right now, please, if you would you smash that like button and hit the subscribe for me? And also, if you agree or don't agree with me today, would you please comment below, because it helps the algorithm get the word out. As a small channel, we're a new channel. We're trying hard to get this word out about the dangers of bodybuilding and steroids. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the episode. In 2018, again, we would go to different gyms in the Atlanta area, and mainly because when we were prepping, everybody at our home gym would always want to talk to us and find out what we're doing and all of this other stuff. So we decided to go to different gyms in the Atlanta area, and one of those gyms, on one day, I was working legs, and legs was my favorite day of the week, quite honestly. And we would get to legs, and I got to this LA Fitness, and I would immediately go over, after getting warmed up, I would go over to the leg curl and do anywhere from 7 to 10 sets of leg curls, really high reps, and to get as much blood into the legs as possible. I wanted my range of motion, especially when I came down to squat, I wanted it to be more limited to where when my calves and my hamstrings touched, I knew I was at the bottom. And so I had gotten done with my leg curls, and I went over and I wanted to get into the leg press so I could pre-exhaust before I did my squatting and my hack squatting. The problem was I got over to the leg press, and there was a kid somewhere around 140 pounds in the leg press, and I saw him laying in there with his feet up, and I kind of wondered, what are you doing, man? He didn't have any weights on, so I thought, he's really weak, he's just getting started, so hey, congratulations. And so I walked over behind the leg press, sat down just for a few minutes, thinking this kid was going to be done pretty quickly. And of course, when you're loaded out on tren and all of this other stuff, and you're getting close to a show, your patience is pretty small, right? And so I sat there and I waited for a few minutes, and I saw this kid get out of the leg press and go over and start grabbing 45s and start putting them on side after side after side. This is one of those double stackers they have at an LA Fitness. And so I think you can get about 32 or 34 plates on there, right? And so I was watching this kid stacking this thing up. And I mean, it took him 15 minutes to stack this up. I was like, I didn't think the kid can lift a 45-pound plate, but he was doing it, man. He got it all completely loaded up. And as he was getting it loaded up, I got past my irritation of having to sit and wait and feeling the blood flow coming out of my legs, and now I was going to have to re-warm up. But I found myself getting very intrigued at what this little kid was doing, because I thought, I'm either about to see the greatest thing I've ever seen, the greatest leg press I've ever seen, or I'm about to see a complete cold-blooded kill. I mean, this kid is going to get crushed. He's going to die, and I'm going to witness it. So one way or another, I'm about to witness something that's epic, right? And so I'm sitting there, and this guy walks over, and he kind of pokes me, and he says, hey, what's going on? I'm like, I'm next, but I'm watching this. And he's like, yeah, is he doing that? I'm like, I don't know, dude. I'm sitting here waiting to see, right? And so we both just sat there and we were watching. And I grabbed my phone and I had it down here, and I was sitting here like this, and I start filming because I'm like, I got to get this on video. Nobody's going to believe this. Either this little kid with the legs this big around is about to leg press a sled full, or he's about to get completely crushed and murdered, and I'm going to have to dig him out. And so that was kind of the thought. And so I was sitting there, and I'm way past even the thought of getting ready for the universe at this point. I am completely entrenched in watching this kid. So I watched him, paying no attention to us, by the way. He walks into the leg press, lays down, and I'm starting to salivate. I'm like, yeah, here he comes, right? And I'm just waiting, and all of a sudden he puts his feet up and he puts them kind of close, and I was like, oh, he's about to die. I mean, that kid with legs that big, his feet that close, that thing's coming down, and his knees are going straight in his mouth, and he's going to fold up like a pretzel. I mean, this kid's dead, right? So I'm sitting there, and I'm like getting ready, and I'm on the edge of my seat, and this guy is like leaning over, and I'm like, get off me, man, you know, watch. And I've got my phone, and we're just waiting, and all of a sudden, this kid goes like this. He picks up his phone, and I see him open up his camera, and he leans back, and he has his feet up, and I see him take a picture. And I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then, I mean, I'm sitting close enough that I can see he opens up Instagram, and he posts a picture of his feet up on a completely loaded out leg sled. Now, this kid's 16 years old, maybe. Post that on Instagram, and I'm guessing he said something to the fact of leg pressing today or something like that. But he completely deceived me. And when I say he deceived me, he had me hook, line, and sinker. I mean, I was all in. I was so invested in watching this kid either completely get destroyed or do the greatest leg press I ever saw. I was waiting for it, and I was let down. He just posted the picture. I'm like, okay, come on, leg press, let me see it. And I'm like, do it, you know. And all of a sudden, he gets up, he walks over to the other side of the leg press, he picks up his little sack of whatever he had, and he kind of looks this way and that way, and he kind of meanders off, and he starts to walk away. And I'm like, hey, no. I said, get back over here. And he walks over, and I said, you're not leg pressing that? He's like, no. I'm like, then you can unload it. I said, that's not cool, man. I said, gym etiquette, you don't sit there and load it up and then not unload it. I was so mad. I was like, this kid completely deceived me. Do you know what? Bodybuilding is nothing more than the same thing. It promises great things, but in the end, it will leave you completely dry, wondering, what just happened? It'll deceive you. Today, we're going to talk about, on the hard truth about bodybuilding and steroids, we're going to talk about 3 hard rules that you cannot escape in life, in bodybuilding, in any other endeavor in life. You cannot get away from these hard rules, these 3 things. Let's get into it. Today, I wanted to talk to you about what are guys really doing. And the truth is, you are being deceived, because that's what bodybuilding is. It's a huge deceit. It promises one thing, but leaves you with another. There are 3 hard rules that I want to talk to you about today when it comes to bodybuilding that we need to know. And number 1, there is nothing new under the sun. I've been getting tons of questions about these 2 young men called the Trend Twins, and I've heard a number of guys talk about them on different podcasts and stuff. And my take on it is this: there's nothing new under the sun, guys. What you see with these 2 young guys is no different than what they saw in the late 80s, 90s with the Barbarian brothers. No, those guys were actors. These guys are not. But the truth is, we've seen twins before. We've seen brothers before. We've seen all of this before. And quite honestly, whether they go as far as the Barbarian brothers or they compete or whatever, there's no new thing under the sun. I always am amazed as a coach when I hear somebody say, I'm going to show the bodybuilding world something they've never seen. And I'm like, really? You're going to show the bodybuilding world something they've never seen? Guys, there's nothing new under the sun. Even if you read the Bible, it says there is literally no new thing under the sun. There's nothing new. Are you Ronnie Coleman? Are you better than the GOAT? Are you going to show us something since Ronnie Coleman? Are you going to show us some greatness that we've never seen and you weigh 180 pounds? Really? Are you going to get so shredded we're going to confuse your skin with saran wrap? I mean, is that how you're going to show us something new? No, I had a client one time who literally told me that. He goes, nobody's ever seen me before, and I'm going to shock the bodybuilding world. And I looked at him and I laughed and I said, you're in your prime. You're 30 years old. I said, and you can't beat me. And I said, so what are you going to show them, the bodybuilding world, that they haven't already seen? Actually, he went in and placed fourth. Not because he wasn't prepared, but because honestly, he didn't have enough mass yet. And so when it comes to the bodybuilding world, you got to understand there's nothing new. There's no really new drugs. Now, hang on a second. I'm not saying there are not new drugs. But what I'm saying is, if you look at what guys are taking, they're still taking the basics. I just saw a video recently. Somebody asked me to take a look at Guy Cisternino talking to Nick Walker, and Guy was saying that he never took above 1,000 milligrams of test, and Nick, to his credit, didn't deny or confirm either way. And I have to say, I highly doubt that what he's saying is true. Now, I do understand that Guy was a lighter competitor, but I will tell you this. I don't believe that you only ever took 1,000 milligrams. Guys, when we were in high school back in the day, 30 some odd years ago, 40 years ago, not quite 40 years ago, but we were taking 1,000 milligrams of tests all the way back then. And the starting point of many guys today that are in the gym is 1,000 milligrams. And you have to say, guys, there's nothing new under the sun. The basic drugs are still all the same. There's nothing new. And all of this stuff, all of it, every bit of it, we've already seen. You're not going to become some super freak that we haven't seen before. And the reason is there is no new thing under the sun. What you've seen before, you'll see again. And that leads me to rule number 2. The body has limits. Do you understand that? Your body has limits. In order for us to see something greater than what we've seen, you have to be that one genetic freak that's either missing a chromosome or added a chromosome or added something to where now all of a sudden your body can expand far beyond anything we've ever seen by the use of drugs. And let me tell you something, your body has limits. I love Nick Trigili, who actually will tell you that his career was shortened because he kept using greater and greater dosages. And what happens is you find out that the law of diminishing returns always happens in bodybuilders. You can only take so much before your receptors don't take everything and before your body starts getting saturated and you start literally going backwards. Guys that never come off will always have problems. They'll always have side effects. Why? Because the body has limits. I remember getting ready for one show and getting hiccups from Trend that were so bad, they were making me pass out. Getting them to where they weren't just one hiccup, they were a series of hiccups that would close off my windpipe and I would pass out. I found myself in the car one day driving, stopped at a red light, and I was hiccuping, and all of a sudden I heard this noise and realized that my head was down on the steering wheel and I was blowing the horn, and thankfully somehow my foot was still on the brake, but somehow I had passed out and my head was on the steering wheel, and the horn blowing is what woke me up. Guys, listen, there is no new thing under the sun. When it comes to these two young guys, the Trent twins, I don't have an opinion on them one way or another, because it's not my place to judge somebody. What it is my place to do is to look and tell you, guys, there's nothing new. But when it comes to guys that young taking that much gear, and no, I do not believe they're natural. I don't believe every top guy out there that says they're natural is natural. I don't believe that. I don't believe any guy above a national level is taking only 1,000 milligrams of test. I also believe they're taking high amounts of other drugs as well. Long-acting insulins, short-acting insulins. Guys, we knew women that were taking as much as men. So don't tell me that there's something new under the sun. But all of those people that we knew are no longer in bodybuilding, including me. And you ask yourself why. Do you ever wonder why you'll see some guy who's really rising, his star is rising, he is the big thing, and then all of a sudden he just fades out? You just don't hear about him anymore. He's not competing in a show, and then the next show, and then the next show, and all of a sudden you've forgotten about this guy. Why? The reason you forget about them is because they are just a shooting star, hoping to hit the big time before their body burns out in the bodybuilding atmosphere. And that's why guys come and guys go, and you think this guy's the greatest, and then he's gone. And let me tell you something, every guy that's out right now, you will not hear of them in just a few years. Why? Because they are taking more and more and more stuff. Now, let me tell you something. This is a hard, fast rule from my standpoint as a bodybuilder and as a coach. Whatever you see a guy admit to, either on video or you see him admit to it in print, he's usually taking 1.5 to 3 times more than that. I know one pro who is no longer with us who made this statement, and I know he made the statement. I was there. He said, "You're not even serious unless you're at 3,000 mgs a week of test." There you go. He's dead. He's gone. Okay? But the amounts of drugs that you take always has the laws of diminishing returns. You cannot sustain that amount of drugs because the body has limits. Those limits are set by God. You were never designed to look like a 300-pound freak. I know. You say, "Jeff, you're so hypocritical." No, I'm telling you. I was there. I lived it. I was a 300-pound freak and more. I had the high dosages. You say, "What did you take?" I was over 3,000 milligrams. Okay? Now, look, you say, "That's irresponsible to say that." No, I'm not trying to be irresponsible. What I'm trying to get you to understand is the amount of drugs it takes to get to a specific level will burn you out quickly. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Ask Nick Trigili. Ask all of the guys that are now burned out or that are no longer in the sport. Why did you get burned out? Because they kept going and kept going and kept going. And by the way, Nick Trigili is one of the only guys I know that actually tells the truth. Right? All of the other stuff is just fluff and it's hype and it's guys talking about, I only did this or I only did that. I don't believe it. Don't believe it. Number one, as a pro bodybuilder, I don't believe it because I had to take much more to get to that level. And number two, I don't believe it because I was a coach and I actually had guys taking more than that. So no, I don't believe it. So there is nothing new under the sun. I don't care if you're some new twins. I don't care if you're some new freak. I don't care what you are. There is nothing new under the sun. You are not going to see anything crazy new come out that you haven't already seen. All right? Again, I don't see any Ronnie Coleman's coming out. And Ronnie Coleman, and probably everybody's definition, is the GOATs. And let me tell you something quickly. The body has limits, doesn't it? If you don't believe me, ask Ronnie Coleman. He found out his body has limits. He is now broken down. Why? Because he reached those limits of what his body could handle, and he far exceeded what his body could do, and now he's broke down. Ask Flex Wheeler. Ask all of those guys that are now gone. Why are they gone? Because their bodies reach their limits. And let me tell you something. We are seeing guys reach their limits far faster than we used to. You don't see guys lasting long periods of time like Dexter Jackson and those guys. Why? Because guys don't go off anymore. Guys don't down cycle. They don't go off completely anymore. Why? Because they're always trying to push the limit. There is not one super heavyweight bodybuilder or one open pro bodybuilder that I know that is not taking an immense amount of drugs. You cannot reach those weights. You cannot reach those sizes without those amounts of drugs. But you will reach your limits. The other thing, number 3, trends come, now not talking about trenbolone acetate or anethate, trends, T-R-E-N-D-S, trends. Trends come and trends go, but they always come back again. My 16-year-old, she's a beautiful little girl, love her to death, and she is wearing clothes that I remember girls wearing when I was young. And it just always makes me laugh because I will tell her, girls in my day used to wear that. Oh, well, it's in style. It's in style. And so, I look better in it than they did. Okay. Well, guess what she has on this very day today? She has on a Pink Floyd shirt. She doesn't even know who Pink Floyd is. But that's the funny part. Trends come and trends go. And then they always come back again. Guys, whatever you've seen in the past, you're going to see it again. And the reason you're going to see it again is because it always cycles. It's always cyclical. You will see it. Matter of fact, let me give you a good example. One year, you will see a national show, and they'll pick guys that look one specific way, maybe super shredded. And then the next year, everybody gets ready and they try to get super shredded, and then they go for the guy that's super huge and not as shredded, right? And so you never know what is exactly being looked for because things come and things go. I remember one year my wife was getting ready for the Universe, and they were looking for the girls, at least it seemed like for the girls that were a little more muscular, and so she worked really hard, got muscular, and she was a figure competitor, got a little more muscular, and that year they were looking for girls that looked like streamlined cats, right? And so we were like, oh my goodness. So the next year, we literally streamlined her down, got her ready, and that year the girl that won was a little bigger. And so finally, at her third attempt, she won, and she blew out the North Americans, which was really cool. But I'm telling you, trends come and they go. And listen, if you don't believe me, just refer back to rule number 1. There's nothing new under the sun, okay? Okay, now, with those 3 hard rules in mind, I want to give you something a little bonus here, and that is this. With all of that in mind, understanding that this sport is built on deception, I want you to hear something from the IFBB, and I'm sure the NPC as well, how they govern themselves on drug testing. I want you to hear it straight from the anti-doping testing in the IFBB on their own website. It says, any athlete under the testing jurisdiction of the IFBB may be tested at any time with no advance notice in competition or out of competition and be required to provide a urine or blood sample. That is on their own website. You see, bodybuilding is literally built on the backs of young men taking drugs to the point that many are failing in their health. They're making millions of dollars off of young men who many will die. Look at all the guys that have died young, all the guys that are no longer around, and the women as well. The IFBB and the NPC, they make their money on the backs of the health of people. Now, that is their drug testing policy. I want to ask you, have you ever heard of the IFBB drug testing any athlete in the Olympia? Any athlete going to any pro show? The answer is zero. None. Never heard of it. Why? Because they promote a look that you cannot get without the amounts of drugs that will kill you. That's the way it is. Listen, you've heard the 3 rules. There's nothing new under the sun. This has been this way forever. I remember a story about Joe Weider, and I was told it by a bodybuilder who was a pro that knew them, and he told me this: when you would go into Joe Weider's office, he had a series of shelves on next to his desk, that on that shelf there would be boxes on that shelf, and it would have bodybuilders' names on it. And he said at the time he remembered seeing a box with Bertil Fox's name on it. Now that's specific. He said it had Bertil Fox's name on it, and it was steroids, that it was for those guys. You see, this has been this way forever. And while those guys were not as advanced in their drug technology as we are today, they were still taking tons of steroids. I know a guy that's in his 80s that competed in the Mr. America way back when, and he talked about the drug usage they had back then. Guys, this has been this way forever. There's nothing new under the sun. But guess what? The body is reaching its limits in bodybuilding so much faster. That guy, that old gentleman, didn't take near the amount of stuff we take today. And he was in his 80s, I think it was, maybe even his 90s. But let me tell you something. You won't hear bodybuilders making it to that age today. Why? Because we are reaching our limits so much faster because of the amount of drugs, growth hormone, all of the different peptides guys are putting in, the SARMs and everything else. We are desperately hooked on a look. And it's vanity. Do you know what the Bible says it is? Vanity. Matter of fact, the wisest man who ever lived outside of Jesus himself, his name was Solomon. God gave him incredible wisdom. And he said this. He said that in the first 2 chapters of the book of Ecclesiastes, he said, I got this for myself, and I got that for myself, and I got women, and I got this, and I got this, and I got riches. So if you could put him, King Solomon, into modern day terms, he would say, I had women, I had money, I had cars and Lamborghinis and Ferraris. He said, I had houses all over the country, houses in the ski resorts. I had houses everywhere. And you know what he said? He said, listen to me. He said, at the end of the day, it's all vanity. It's all grabbing the wind and opening your hands and realizing you can't catch the wind. That's bodybuilding. You can reach out and you can catch it and you can think you've got it. But when you open your hands, you realize it's the wind. Guys, you can take as many drugs as you want to. And I know I'm not going to stop you, but I hope I can influence one of you. Just one. Understand, you're trying to grab the wind. I've been there. I've lived it. I've done it. You say, oh, Jeff, you're just trying to gain popularity, or you're just trying. No, I am literally on mission. I could care how many subscribers that we get. I really don't. But if I can help one guy avoid this lifestyle. And let me tell you what King Solomon said at the very end of his life. He said, listen, he said, don't live your life trying to grab the wind or seeking pleasure or stuff or all of that stuff. He said, serve God in the days of your youth before you get old. And the days come where you said, man, I had no pleasure in all of that stuff. It doesn't matter. It's all the wind. And so I would tell you, if you are somebody that is on the fence about all this stuff, you're trying to figure out what your life is about. It's not about bodybuilding, okay? Bodybuilding is just an activity. Don't identify as that. You may enjoy working out and go to the gym, work out, but don't get involved in this sport because this sport is for your soul. Why? Because if you look back at the book of Ecclesiastes just for a second, look what he says. He said, I did this, I did that, I did this, I got me this, and I got me that. Over 40 times in the first 2 chapters, he uses that little word, I. That's the problem in bodybuilding. It's that one word, I. I look in the mirror and I want to do this and I want to take more drugs and I want to get this look and I eat for this and I live for this and my whole life, I. And that I will get you taking more and more and more stuff so that you can somehow gain the look you think you're striving for, but in the end, you'll be broken in your health and you'll open your hands and you've grabbed the wind. So please listen to those hard rules. Don't live your life for this, not even a sport, this beauty pageant. Understand there's nothing new under the sun. Understand your body has limits and it will pass away. Number 3, trends come and trends go and they always come back again. And if you don't believe me, just refer back to rule number 1. But understand one last thing before you go. All of this means nothing if you get pro cards and fame and you're in magazines, and guys used to constantly ask me, how did you get sponsors and all of this stuff? If you get all of this, the Bible says, what does it profit you if you gain all of this and you lose your own soul? If you're interested in finding out how you can change your life just like I did, I'm going to put a link right up here that will tell you how my life changed in 2019 and how yours can too if you want it to. Thanks again for coming. Next week, we've got a lot more coming for you, and we're so glad you're here. Thanks again. Please, one more time, hit that like button. We need you to do that. Subscribe button. And please share this. Comment. Tell us what you think. Do you think we're full of hot air? Do you think what we're saying is true? Tell somebody about this show. We appreciate it. Have a great day.